Hi, Ivy.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
Fantastic. Now that we're doing this, so so first of all, thank you for agreeing to be part of my International Women's Day celebration for 2021. Woohoo. And the
Super
idea
proud.
is just thank you. Um, the idea is to share, some stories about, successful, Black women, and just sort of exploring, different facets of their journey, essentially. So, for those that don't know you, can you please share your name, what you do, where you live, and your favorite breakfast?
Okay, so okay. So Aibee Abidoye. I'm the EVP of music at Chocolate City Music in Lagos, Nigeria. It's a record label. Within among other companies, but it's a record label and I food, full English breakfast as established. So the hash browns, the baked beans, the sunny side up. I don't like it well done. Um, Chicken sausages and perhaps mushrooms. I'm not sure about mushrooms. Sometimes, depends on my mood.
Really?
So yeah, definitely the full English breakfast girl. You
Okay.
can put some mimosa on the side, eh? I won't.
I feel like, yeah, you always trust, people that like full English. So, you get an A star for that. So, okay, cool. So we've known each other for a very, very, very long time. So, I like a good story. I like, gist. Um, so let's start off with how it feels being the first female executive vice president at Chocolate City and the first female on the board.
How does it feel? It feels daunting in a way, as with a lot of firsts. But I find that for us, like for a lot of women, I wouldn't say every woman, for a lot of women, it usually is that, it's always like that. Like, can I do this? Am I ready for this? And I think um when I found out that that was my immediate thought of just, oh my God. And then I started thinking through. I remember I made a call to one of my very dear friends at that time, and he just said, look, you're made for this. Like, you technically have been doing a lot of this already. Yeah, it's just the title. And then I was like, oh yeah, well, you're not wrong. So but the journey started, I would say I've always loved music. I feel like I'm one of those musicians that when you say, oh, tell us the history, they say, oh, I've been singing since I was 2. you know um I genuinely feel like that's sort of been my story in a way. My sister was a singer-songwriter growing up, so we were the guinea pigs. We would always, like, we had some stars in our house, and my sister would arrange all of us like a band, like legit, and give us parts to sing, and we would literally chorus it until we're hungry, and we were just like, please, can we eat food? Like, we're actually dying. um but I mean, yeah, so I enjoyed it. I loved everything about it. I loved singing. I loved learning the songs. I loved performing the songs. But I've never really seen myself as the person to take the stage. And I didn't know that there was a business around it. I just did it for fun. And then I remember when I had my first summer work, I went to Pepperdine in California. And my sister was, I think, a sophomore, or no, she was a senior. Yeah, I think she was a senior when I got there. And she just said, Ivy, you have to work. You can't stay at home for summer. You need to get work experience. And so she said, what do you want to do? What do you like doing? And she's like, actually, I know, because you're always singing in the shower. Just get a job in music,
Easy.
right? And so she went online and actually helped me research it because I didn't know much about this. She went online and was like, okay, music businesses around us, right? And there was one near Santa Monica. I lived near the school, which was in Malvo, but she looked for a music business around us, checked out the guy's profile, see that, who he worked with and all of that. And he had worked, it was a music clearance house. And basically what music clearance is anytime that a song is played in a movie, they're the people that basically clear the rights to the song so that the movie's not pulled down and people are actually paid what they're due. So I was like, that exists? Like people get paid for music on radio? What? It was really fascinating to me. So I remember my sister driving me there on my first day, just like, and then she saw that it was a small house and she was just like, please, I hope this man is not too rude, please. I remember coming down from the car and just being like, please, I want to meet the owner of this business. Yes, who are you? Where am I going to sit? Where it's like, I should just be the big sister. Like, when do they have lunch around here? Like, and I was embarrassed, of course, as any, child. I was just like, oh God, please. First day, but I made one of my best friends in terms of like just my music resource in that company. And it was my first dip into the world of music business and just understanding the interest. And I think it was important for me to understand it that early. So it kind of piqued my interest in the business. And then I immediately started sort of like creating opportunities for myself to learn more about it. So my father wanted me to do law. Immediately, I knew that it was going to move into entertainment law. I started, then my sister got signed to Sony, and I took more interest in.
Sorry, so that's just 1 second. So what I'm hearing is, so from the beginning, right, you had like, I guess like the support from family, you had the passion for music, and it just sort of started from there, and you were like, okay, right, so this is the plan. So from early on, you knew, okay, it's gonna be music, and I just need to figure out what role to play in the music industry.
Exactly. And I think because I knew that I wasn't going to be front-facing singing, it was probably not a conversation I needed to have with my parents. So like, I felt like, I mean, I'm not going to be a bum. There are people that actually work in this business. And so I don't remember ever having a conversation with my mother, to be honest with you, about this.
So do you think it was an easier decision to make because it was going to be the back end of the business rather than the front end of the business?
So, and I think at that time it was still exploratory. So you have to understand, I was in school, I was in college, I was taking like poli-sci classes, because that was sort of like a pre-law sort of thing. You had to take a first degree in the States first, and then you go and do your JD, which is more specialized in law. So I was still doing like the social sciences of sorts, political science. That was my major. I wasn't majoring in music, but I thought, oh, this is a cool thing to do on the side. It's a cool thing to learn. And that's what I always did, with the understanding that I was going to do law, until, when I went to law school, I was like, oh, okay, there's entertainment law. So I can actually merge my passion. And at this time on the side, I had already done some work with my sister, who was already signed to a record label. So I think she gave me the validation that I needed in a way. I wasn't the first entry into that industry. And so where, historically Nigerian families would just be like, music, like my sister had sort of taken the hit because I remember she was a business major. She was supposed to do medicine. And then like maybe 2 years in or 3 years in, she was like, don't like blood, moving. And she literally had to crash course like 4 years, in like 2 years or something crazy like that. And I remember she was having the conversation with my dad that she wanted to do business. And then he was like, so who's going to be the doctor in our family? I don't understand. What do you, and she fought that fight and, eventually, and then my father passed away. So I guess her going into music, my mother was never really the person to plan out anyone's life. Her thing is just, are you good at what you're doing? Are you able to sustain yourself? Do you love it? Are you passionate? And are you going to be okay? Like that was my mom's general thing. So when my sister decided that she was going to do music, my mother was not really aggressively against it. I think the person that would have really been aggressively against it might have been my dad. Even though thinking about it now, she had already been doing internships and the like, and told my father about that. And she was already sort of intimating him into the
into
music so that he was understanding it.
mm,
So there was some level of like understanding, but I don't know if he would have been like, you are a musician. Like, I don't know how he would have taken to that, because she entered the music business as an intern,
yeah,
working at Sony,
yeah,
and so she was going the business route of it as well.
yeah.
Um,
But
but by I was then going to be full-time in the music space.
yeah,
She had already been signed at that time.
yeah.
We had already worked on a project. I remember her first album, African Girl, we had released it in the UK
Mhm.
after she left Sony. And I remember it was on the Billboard charts, like it was big. There was like a big article about her in The Guardian. So I was eased into it because my sister really made it an easier step for me, to be honest with you.
Okay.
But she
So
also made
it sounds like having that role model of
I,
sorts kind of
yeah,
helped,
yeah,
like having someone that you could look up to, and then also having the experience in the industry as well, but knowing fully well
yeah,
that you've got this person that you can trust as well,
yeah,
guiding you through the journey.
exactly, exactly. She gave me a pass. She gave me a soft landing. She gave me the validation that I think I needed at that time, because it wasn't very popular to do music and be in music in Nigeria. I don't think.
Yeah,
And I think because there was just a world, like we both knew that there was this multi-million-dollar industry um that was there, and like not really being, you know,
hadn't really been explored per
it was
se.
there. Exactly. So we did that, and I think that was my first entry into it. And then I had decided, finishing school, that I wanted to come back to Nigeria, because at that time we had lost my dad and my mother was in Nigeria alone. I was finishing school. I didn't like the stress of like, oh, are you going to stay? What are you going to do? How are you going to get work visa? Like all these things. I was just like, y'all can have it. Like, as long as I'm doing well and I can afford to travel, I will keep doing that.
Yeah,
If a green passport or a blue passport is in my future, it's
then great.
but I wasn't going to like, be stressing myself about it, and like doing odd jobs just to stay in the country. So
Yeah.
I remember that time I gave up my passion for music in a way, because
Oh,
I just felt like the Nigerian industry would not be able to accept me, or like they were not advanced to the level that I was. And I felt like there was no place that would understand what I'm talking about.
but that is
And
actually
so I remember,
interesting. Sorry to cut you because that's an interesting point they just made there about giving up on music for a little while because you didn't think that Nigeria understood what you were trying to do, and that kind of nicely moves on to my sort of next question about what it's like for you, especially as a young Black woman um, working in music in Nigeria, um,
yeah,
and again what that experience has been like, because then there's like three different factors there.
yeah.
Yeah, so what that has been like, and maybe
I
versus
think
the experience in the US.
I didn't feel like there was anybody that I could look up to, or there was anybody that I could pick any cues from, to be honest with you. Um,
Mm,
I didn't know of any female that was in the music business, like, at all. I also didn't really know much about the music business in Nigeria at all.
mm,
I remember my first I was looking for HR jobs. I remember I sort of gotten like some experience in HR. And I always felt like I have a knack for like, sort of like, if I work with somebody, I can spot the talent. I can say, oh gosh, you're not PR, you're creative marketing, like
mm,
um and so I just thought, I'll try HR, because like I'm sure people need jobs in Nigeria, and I'm not trying to be broke. But I had zero passion for it. And so I remember meeting a friend of mine who was working on a set. Um, we went to let me say we went to primary school together. Her name is Tari. And Tari was like, oh, I just moved back, blah, blah, blah. Like, yeah, she's in film, and I guess they're doing a stage play or something. And the HR person was looking for people that had experience to help them work on set. And because she knew that I had this entertainment background, she was like, oh, like, you should totally send your CV to the person scouting. And I sent it, and the girl called me. I was like, sorry, you're overqualified. She was like, I'm just gonna tell you straight. Like, your CV is so impressive. Like, there's no way we can afford you, but there's somebody that you need to meet. Aibee Abidoye. He's the CEO of Chocolate City. Have you heard of Chocolate City? I was like, what's that? She's like, okay, do you know MI? I said, who's that? She was like, well, I'm gonna send your CV.
Yeah.
I think that they're the visionaries that you need to be acquainted with. And I remember he didn't call me for a while, so I started looking for something else. I had applied to. My sister's friend at that time was one of the investors at Jobberman. And he was like, you've moved to Nigeria. Yes, please come and work with us. I'm sure that you can add value. And I was like, it's not really my thing. He's like, you can add value, IB. Whatever it is that you're going to do, I'm sure you'll be able to figure it out. And so at that time, I was doing NYSC, I think, and they wanted to hire me to work at Jobberman, and they had given me an offer that I was looking into. I'll do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember Aldu asked me if I had signed anything at Jobberman, and I said no, I hadn't signed anything, I hadn't committed anything, and he said you need to come to Abuja immediately. So I went to Abuja, I met with the team, and he sort of I remember just talked me through their vision and everything, and I was like, this is what these guys are thinking, you know. I just thought this is one person that understands the music business and somebody that might be interesting to work with. And I remember calling my sister and just my siblings, who, like, they are literally my sounding board, yeah, for any major decision I'm making in my life. So I called them and I said, look guys, there's this company, they're kind of, you know, they're doing relatively well, they have some strong artists, you know, they have a 5-year plan, they have, you know, they sold me on the vision. And I think if they hadn't sold me on the vision, I wouldn't be at Chocolate City. I think it's still the thing that makes it an easy choice for me, is the fact that they have a vision, and when I see how far we've come, because now I can see that I'm a part of that.
Yeah.
I just feel there's a part of me that is like, there, we're almost there, you know, we're and to be honest with you, over time, they have tried to incentivize me by giving, like, you know, shares, and I guess that's where the board conversation comes in. But before I get there, you know, they sold me on the vision of what Chocolate City was about, what it wanted to do, and it aligned with my past experience and the type of growth that I wanted. And I felt that being in Nigeria, it was such a nascent market that there was so much room for growth. And I could be anything and do anything, and we could be the first. I loved the idea of being first to do, first to, you know, and I guess there's always been that slightly ambitious side of me that is like, yeah, we're the first. And so it's nice to be, you know, to be like where I am now, the first EVP of music at Chocolate City, and to be the first, you know, woman to sit actively on the board and have those conversations about the direction of the company.
Yeah.
But it started with them selling me.
Okay. And I just want to like draw on something that you said, because you said you were sold on the vision. They, you know, they had a 5-year plan. You were sold on the fact that, you know, you could be the first, you know, doing something. And, you know, I just wanted to sort of call that out, because, you know, it's not always about the paycheck, right? So it sounds like
Yes.
you know, you could see
Oh, sure.
what was ahead, and you know what you could do. And so I just wanted to also get a sense from you as well, what other values and principles you, I guess, sort of live by, that have sort of helped you on your way to success.
So, just to highlight, I think I'm going to highlight this because it sort of drives the other narrative for me. The paycheck was important, and I wasn't going to skim on that. And I had people to advise me on that. My sister, I remember, she said, "You have earned an education that is stellar anywhere else in the world,
Mhm.
and you must be compensated for that." she kept drumming that in my mind. And so even though I was sold on the vision, I didn't drop the paycheck conversation. I was very clear that if you're going to have me, you're not going to pay me like an NYSC person. You're going to pay me full time, what a full time starting person would get. And I remember I earned a lot at that time, because at that time, NYSC people would get like 20K or something like that. I think I got like times 5 or something crazy, like, or even more. But I remember I said, you're going to treat me as a starting staff. That's the first thing. And because I had the qualification, I was able to make that negotiation. So I think the first thing is knowing what you bring to the table, because value always sells itself. The second thing is, don't treat yourself like you're not worth it, because a lot of times what we do is we don't see ourselves like the rest of the world is captured. So in the Nigerian market, I was valuable, and I didn't lose sight of that. But it took people to remind me of that, because as a passionate person, yeah, I mean, I'm driven by passion for the most part, and you're right that the paycheck is never really always the thing for me. But I am constantly reminded by people that know it has to be in the conversation, and it has to be at the forefront. And also reminding me about the psychology of people, that people will find the money if they see the value. Yeah. So your job is to pitch the value and let them figure out how they're going to keep you. Yeah. Because ultimately for them, the value is going to bring money. It's going to bring their vision. It's going to bring, all those other things.
And actually, thank you for lifting that up, because, I mean, as we all know, women get paid less than men, right? Mm-hmm. And then Black women get paid even less so. So while, you're in Nigeria where, okay, race is not necessarily an issue, but you still have the gender biases that, that you have to, I guess, sort of live with every day. So that's actually quite an interesting point that you make there, that, because as women, we tend to want to just do something, right? But we're saying that, still don't take your eye off the ball in terms of, what you're compensated, and just make sure that, your value is clear.
And you know it. I mean,
know it. Yeah. And it sounds like because it's the right people around you to kind of help you continue.
No, honestly, I think that my sister has been such a great, and my brother, like my family, they're, I will call my sister the first feminist that I ever encountered, in the sense that she just believes that because I'm a woman, don't come at me with nonsense. You know what I mean? Like, she just has no time, man. She has no time for it. And so, like, she will constantly remind me about that. So I was fortunate. I think a lot of who I am is that I had that. I had that. She was an entrepreneur. She started a business. She started paying people. She started earning very early. So, like, my sister is the girl that was like, look, I need some money. She's gonna whip up like pizza and sell it at like the price of Domino's. You know what I mean? And it's like, Domino's has been there for a long time. What are you doing? Or like, she's like, yeah, because my chicken tastes amazing. My pizza tastes amazing. You're gonna pay for it. Since like Atlantic Hollow, since high school.
That is,
so she's always had that entrepreneur. Yeah, so she's always had that very aggressive entrepreneurial, like, no, you pay me what I'm worth. What is the market rate? What is the going price? And that's the price she's pushing at. Even down to like, yes, you're in Nigeria, but this level, anywhere else in the world will get this. If, let's say, we discount for the Nigerian value, discount by like 5% or 10%. That's where you're starting.
But that's it. That's it.
That's what you need to be thinking. So when I'm calling a price, I'm calling it international. It's, you see, the way you see yourself is the way you project, is what you ask for. Closed mouths don't get fed. Yeah. So it was nice to have that grounding.
So
it really propelled me
forward. And so I'm going to ask like a few questions here, because I think this will be very interesting, especially for young ladies that want to come up in the business, or maybe even in other industries, but just sort of hearing that thinking. Um, first of all, so based on, so what is like, you know, a feminist for you? Like what does that mean for you? So not necessarily some theoretical, you know, description or
Yeah.
definition, but just for you, what is that like? What is being a feminist
I
for you?
think a woman that isn't defined by defined or limited by other people's interpretation of who she should be.
Mm,
That's the way I see it. You're not limited by somebody else's circumstance. You're not limited by, what your office is calling you in terms of like what your value should be. Yourself, you understand your value, you understand your strengths and your weaknesses, and you don't allow anyone else shape it for you. Because we were having a conversation earlier, and I was talking to you about how like a lot of things that we think we are actually not what we are. It's what we've been told.
mm,
um and doing that work to understand, who am I, what do I bring to the world, how do I show up, and making sure that people understand that, because you end up being what you allow.
mm, mm.
Sometimes you have to teach people, they don't know, so you have to say, I understand that you have a wife at home that you may be talking to like this because you are XYZ, narcissist or like chauvinist or whatever. Or I understand that you have a daughter at home that whatever your environment allows you to do to other women,
Yeah.
I understand that. However, you've just encountered one person that would teach you otherwise. So while you may maintain that with other people, when you're approaching me, you don't maintain that. And I don't think that it's just not being afraid to say that. It's owning that and not being afraid to say that. And understanding that in some cases, you may allow yourself to be vulnerable. You may allow yourself to be, to be defined differently by another person because you believe they've earned it or whatever. That's your choice to make at the end of the day. But it shouldn't be like a standard that you just accept across board, because, you know.
So there are like a few things I just want to ask just based on that answer there, because there's like the question of, so there are two things actually, I think out of all the things that are sort of, my head is like just going off. The two things I will sort of pick up on there. So number one is how easy, or how did you manage to um, sort of stand your ground in terms of, okay, this is my value, this is what I can bring, and this is the behavior that I will or will not accept as you rose through the ranks? Because some people might say, yes, it's easier to do this when you're at the top,
It's not,
but not
no, even at
necessarily.
the top, not easy. No.
So that's something, you know, I
It's
just
been,
want to like explore.
I think that
Mhm.
for me, I have bosses that are more open-minded than others, that want to be pro-women. And I think that the fact that they lean towards that allows for certain conversations to happen. Not everybody has it the same way that I did. But I think it's recognizing that, okay, if this environment doesn't allow me to do this, I'm going to leave. Because there are certain levers that you push as you move up. As you move up, like you almost sort of like at some level start reaching like you're now on par. And
Mhm.
for some people, it's like, I've allowed you this much, don't go
Yeah,
past this.
like a glass ceiling
You
almost.
want to have like a glass ceiling.
Yeah.
And so the higher you rise, the harder it is to have those conversations. And sometimes you lose friends, like sometimes you're not really on the best. It's one of the things that I'm constantly trying to understand and learn. It's a very difficult thing because learning on the job is different. I wish there were more people that helped us make sure that we manage it's called stakeholder relationship management.
Yeah.
And sometimes in trying to say that this is how I should be treated, we don't communicate it in a way that we are still able to maintain the relationship and maintain the stakeholders. And I think this is across board, men, women, whatever. I just think it's the business, the communication in business world is so different.
Mhm.
And that's one thing that I'm learning. It's like the way we do business in Nigeria and the way we communicate is different from the way we do business internationally. And the more exposed you are, you realize that there's a huge gap. and there's a learning curve, and sometimes you don't have the time, you have to run very quickly to close that gap. So I think those conversations are always different depending on the environment. If you don't have bosses that allow for that conversation, it's hard. If you're in Nigeria, it's also very different because we generally have a chauvinist, like, and like culturally, there's a chauvinistic overtone. So that's one level of difficulty. But then also the person, if you don't have bosses that understand that and are global minded and, forward thinking. But I'm saying even when you have those, they still have their own individual biases that they have to approach. And there is now, like, so that's the Nigerian context. Then imagine a Nigerian company that is then going globally, where in the past you've had your values to make the argument for you and to say that this is how much I should be paid. The value that you think you're bringing in a Nigerian company is totally different from the value that you're bringing in a global perspective. So the sell is harder. The sell is harder because they can find 5, 10, 15 people that have been doing that 10 years ago. So it's like, how do you make yourself relevant? I think you have to understand what the value add for that company is. If the company is trying to come into Nigeria, then your value proposition is still high because they don't have a lot of people in Nigeria that can do that anyway. But if you have a global mindset, then it's difficult. You have to do your own education. You have to do your own learning. You have to speak their international lingua. And I think that has been the difficulty generally as you move up the ranks.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's very interesting. And you talked about, the cost of like standing your ground, which I think is very key for people to actually understand because, it's glamorous to be at the top. However, there is a cost to sort of, staying true to your values and actually standing your ground and saying, as a woman, this is how I'll be treated. And this is how, this is the value I bring. And I'm not afraid to say it. The second point I was actually going to touch on there is, you talked about being vulnerable. And, as I'm sure you're aware, there's I guess there's a sort of stereotype about Black women, especially, always being
angry.
Being angry. Yeah, exactly. Like, the angry Black woman. And so I wanted to, the Black woman experience is not monolithic at all. Like, because, once you start bringing in different factors, it just like, it's so different for everyone. So I just wanted to sort of explore that a little bit. So in the, if you're dealing with sort of companies outside of Nigeria, what are the stereotypes that you have to deal with, whether it's, race, gender, ethnicity, like all of that kind of stuff. And then in Nigerian context, how do you deal with the stereotypes? You hear, oh, women are so emotional, they shouldn't be bosses, So just what is that like, and how do you navigate them?
So that's a very interesting question because I think it really depends on what you're talking about. I think the way you find, so for me in entertainment, because people are trying to understand the Nigerian African entertainment context, somebody would say that I'm a unicorn in the sense that they don't have a lot of women that understand and in the business that understand it from that perspective. So they're listening, right? They're listening. They're like, okay, value. And so it's in that perspective, I would say that, you get people to call you on panels, they want to hear, they want to learn, all of that stuff. I would say that with partnerships, like, then you're working more, you're working, there's the day-to-day functional working relationship that personally, I just believe that their standard of working is different, it's higher, right? So I'm talking about, let's say a partner, let's say I'm working with a partner to release a record or something like that. The way they work is different from the way we work. And you see that learning curve. And I think that is the stakeholder management relationship I'm talking about. That if you're not very careful, that relationship can go sour very quickly, either because you're being, defensive, or, you have a huge learning curve that you need to do. It just creates some kind of like tension. And whereas in Nigeria, it might be like, oh, wow, this is excellent. The standard that they just work internationally is just so different. And you have to learn very quickly. And I think as the world becomes more digital, there needs to be on both ends. We need to ramp up, and they also need to be a bit more empathetic to understand that, the learning styles are different. We need to, and the work styles are different. So I guess from that perspective, I don't know if there's a stereotype there, but perhaps there is, that needs to be managed, where both parties need to show a little bit more empathy. You need to be empathetic with yourself to understand that you're not stupid. It's just what you've learned. And it's okay, you can learn again. You can relearn to for global standard. And they also need to be more empathetic, like, okay, their environment is different. Their challenges are different. They may have light issues. They may, need to sit in the car for 2 hours, and perhaps they're not in the best state to, send the email now, or like things might be longer, whatever the case is. So that's why I was saying that the relationship depends on what it is you're talking about and what level. So then in Nigeria, the stereotypes exist. The angry Black woman, oh, you're too emotional. Definitely. There's a workplace culture that, is global, really. They just feel like you should be a bit more. And it's funny because there are women that are rational and can be very clear without being emotional and unapologetic. But I also find that there are men that are also emotional. And I think just from my experience, there are men that are very emotive and will get there very quickly. So it's a stereotype that you kind of need to deal with, but you must be aware of, because the truth is that at the end of the day, when people are having those conversations about you, you're not in the room. And they're talking about you based on the stereotypes that they have. So you almost have to adjust, which is frustrating, because there's a part of like,
what does that mean?
It's like sometimes you cannot be as emotional as you normally would be. There's a workplace culture that you need to learn. You have to be clear. You have to listen. You have to communicate clearly. If you're being emotional, people shut down. So they hear the emotion, they don't hear the message.
So I think, so what I actually want to understand there is, in that situation, because what I'm hearing is almost like, because you said, men can be emotional as well. So is it that, when men are emotional, it's passion, but when women are emotional, it's irrational?
Of whether you're male or female, there's a workplace cultural way of being that you don't learn early enough. It's sort of like, at least for me, I've learned on the job, which can be very expensive. Can be very, very expensive. And some of these things are like, you can't make the time back, you can't make the relationship back, you can't, like, they are just lost their costs, right? But I think that there's a workplace culture that surpasses gender, that we all don't learn very early. And if we have the right mentors around us, then we're able to really succeed in the workplace. But as far as like in Nigeria, the stereotypes of being a woman, a lot of women actually move very quickly up the ranks in Nigeria, because I find that serious businesses that function well. Yeah, if you look at I remember I was looking at a map once and they were saying women CEOs or something like that. And Nigerian women ranked pretty highly. You find women that are chairman of boards, you find women, because people are just like, look, we just want to make money. Please, are you bringing us money? So, but definitely there are the things that, she's a bitch, she's emotional. Yes, but I also find that sometimes there is this thought at the back of a lot of women's minds that they will treat me different because I'm a woman. And they sometimes end up living up to those stereotypes. Sometimes they're not necessary. I remember there was this thing that happened to me once, and I was like, oh, because I'm a woman, they're doing this to me. And then I stepped back from the situation and said, actually, forget about the woman title. How did you perform? And why did they pick this person? And I saw very clearly that that person surpassed me in certain things that the business needed. And it no longer, you have to be able to step back from these things sometimes and stop letting those stereotypes drive the way you respond to things, because things will always happen. What matters is the way you respond to them.
Yeah.
And a lot of times our responses are based on these things that we constantly hear. Women are this, women are not treated this, women are this, women are that, women are that.
Yeah.
And then you end up living up to that.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing that you constantly hear.
Yeah.
But if you just hear like, oh, I'm, positive things, kindness is, all those quotes that tell you that, maybe kindness is better than whatever the case is, then you respond in kindness and you respond in, and then you're not necessarily living up to those other negative titles that they give you. But yes, there are people, I think this goes for anything. The more you move up the ranks, the harder it is you're able to keep friends, and the more difficult, because you just don't have time for nonsense. You're busy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, people will always say that you're tough, or people will say that, they will give you a title or whatever it is. And you have to understand that it comes with the territory.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
You don't have to be liked by everybody.
So it sounds like to sort of navigate, like, that sort of career progression, it's about not necessarily listening to the external narrative, but almost creating, your own that you live by, and you try to obviously, I guess, show to people.
Project.
Yeah, sorry, that's the word, like to project to people, and then so basically ignore the noise, but then also be willing to step back and also be able to assess yourself. So don't be so quick to assign, if something doesn't go your way, to assign that to some sort of maybe discrimination or bias. So do the assessment first, and then if that still doesn't add up, then you can start looking at those other factors.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. It's easy because people want an excuse, like it's easy to find an excuse to reason. And then if you hear these biases, it's easy to just say it's because I'm a woman, it's because I'm Black. And a lot of times, even I listen to them and I'm like, no, you actually just did a shitty job. Like, no. But I understand that, and I think it's really important. Growth only comes with that evaluation.
Yeah.
And if you really want to grow, then you care about that assessment. You care about it, and that assessment is right, so that you can make the changes that you need to move up and to grow.
Okay. Oh, fantastic. And from a sort of professional standpoint, because you've dropped so many gems today, like the importance of, sort of your value system, your passion, the network as well, because that's obviously how you got your first job as well. So there's so many little gems there. But I just want to ask, like, so given your role in Chocolate City now, what are you guys doing, I guess, to encourage or to I guess help, young women? Just like what is the vision there?
So my boss always looks to women to hire first. Funny enough, he just thinks that women are more competent. He says it all the time. He said because the men
everyone would that way.
No, you say that the guys will just go and they want to open their own and compete with you, but the women tend more loyal for some reason. I don't know. But one can look at that as another stereotype, right? Why do you feel like women don't also want to be entrepreneurs and start their own thing? Yeah. So I mean, it really just depends. But I think that there are a couple of things that we've done. I remember when we had somebody that was working with us that had a child, and we created different work hours for her where she had to leave earlier because of the traffic, because we needed to make sure that she got home to her child. Yeah. And I think that even as the world becomes a bit more global and there's, work from home, COVID, all of that stuff, we're being a little bit more flexible. And we realize that, the game is actually to be more flexible and to be more dynamic, so that whatever the needs are from a gender perspective, or sex perspective, or like, actual work perspective, we can be flexible enough to allow what would I call it, circumstances.
I guess to
Right.
I
So
guess to accommodate people's needs. Yeah.
yeah, to accommodate people's needs. Yeah, as long as you're delivering on your work. So I guess that would come in more for like maybe women that, I don't know, may have children, or that may require a lot more attention at home. But as far as like hiring, yeah, we definitely tend to look at women a lot of times, to hire for hiring purposes. I would say that we have about the same number of women in the company as we do men, in
Nice.
terms of, yeah, definitely. Um, in terms of our artists, that's different. We have more men than we do women. And I think that's where maybe the inequality shows a lot more, because we find that managing women tends to be a lot more expensive. So you're spending a lot more on the way they look and all of that stuff. And that's just really because of the nature of the business in Nigeria. It tends to be more 360, where instead of just being a record label, you're also doing management. So from the management perspective, you have to take care of their hair, make sure their clothing, all of that stuff. That can become expensive. And in a market that doesn't really have that much capital available for music generally, you want to make sure that as much as possible, the money is for marketing to bring money back.
Yeah.
And not necessarily on something that may not necessarily be immediately revenue generating. Right. So, but what we're also finding is that women also bring in the most money, if you think about it. Like, if you think about like comparing it to the rest of the world, right? Rihanna, Beyonce, what's her face now?
I guess you have. I mean, you have the greats as well. You have the Madonnas, right? You have the Chers. Like,
yeah, because you think about it more from the perspective of not just the music, but there are also additional revenue streams with like wigs, hair, makeup, clothes, lingerie. Like, there's so many other streams of income that are available from a woman's perspective, and seem to be exploited more from a woman's perspective than for men. So there's just like additional revenue streams, like tons more, like her face, or nails, like few, a lot of times these guys are marketing products heavily to women because women buy a lot than men. So in a roundabout way, it's like, yes, heavy, high investment, but could be, large revenue streams as well.
Oh, I love that. And
it's a capital of women, because I know that I definitely at some point, dating a guy as somebody in music at that time was very much like, so what are you doing?
Yeah.
What is happening? Why are you going to this studio? They must like you. Oh, they must, like all these stupid things. Or sometime another person thought that I slept my way up.
I was going to ask about that as well. Like,
I communicated the same to my boss, and my boss literally struck me down like, you must be an idiot. Like, the next time you approach me with that kind of nonsense, like, I'm gonna have to deal with you. So there are people that really do feel like, if you are in a high position, emails, a lot of times people say, dear sir, and I have to remind them, I'm a woman. Do your research. If you're going to approach me, do your research. Don't come and say, dear sir. So there are cultural biases and stereotypes that definitely interfere with way of doing business. And I don't know if that is also showing up in the roles that are available for women, or the roles that women are entering. Not that the roles that are available, because the roles are available. It's just that, where are you working? Will your husband feel comfortable if you're at night, doing an A&R run? Would he feel comfortable if you're touring? For younger women, yes. But what about married women? What about women that spend their time 5, 10, 15 years building that career, and then at a particular age they have to get married? Do they then stop working? So these are some of the things that I feel like as Nigerians we have to deal with and resolve.
That's very interesting. And I guess the first step is actually identifying the issues, right? Because then you can actually start to manage them and figure out, okay, what can we put in place? How can we start to tackle these? one at a time. So that's yeah, well, that's pretty interesting. So yeah, definitely, we'll have some more conversations offline. But I just wanted to sort of touch on some more personal things before we round off. Um, what do you what do you think that you are capable of,
What about anything?
or what do you know you're capable of?
It's very interesting. I was having this conversation with someone and I said to them, I said, you know what? I actually realized that I'm quite a capable person.
Mm.
I don't think I'm incapable of anything. I genuinely do not think that I'm incapable of anything. And I think it's sad that it's like just a dawning,
Mm-hmm.
but I do realize that there are challenges that I face that make it difficult for me to achieve certain things.
Mm-hmm.
So capacity is one thing. Being availed the resources that you need to achieve what you're capable of doing is another.
Another thing.
And it's important that we don't confuse the two, because a lot of times you then feel like, oh, I'm incapable of doing this because da 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 da.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of times I started realizing that, oh, actually no, it's just because I've not planned properly.
Yeah.
It's just because I haven't put in enough effort to learn this.
Mm-hmm.
It's just because it's always because of something else, not because I am naturally incapable.
Yeah.
I realize that I am quite a capable person, very, in fact. Once I've planned around it and I have the resources, I deliver at a very high level.
And that is interesting because I mean, my sort of thinking is that once you know that you're capable, then capacity, resources, all those things would actually come along because you will go looking for them. But if you feel like you're not capable, you probably wouldn't, you probably make like, a half-assed attempt at,
Yes,
getting what you need anyways. So, oh, okay. And
absolutely. Yeah.
is there something that, how do you remind yourself? Well, actually, you just said now that you just realized that you were capable. Was there something that triggered that?
Absolutely. So in the last year or two, I've been asking myself a lot of questions just about like being better. When people have it, when you're like someone like me that is really wanting to make impact,
Mm.
you self-assess a lot. And in my assessment, I found that, okay, there are certain things that I'm at first I thought I was unhappy about certain things because I felt that I was incapable. And so what that does is that it just depresses you. It just brings you down. It makes you inefficient and all of that. And then I had a coach that was able to sort of point out certain things that, okay, in this situation where you're incapable, in this situation where you're incapable, what is the difference?
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized, just talking through the issues, oh, I hadn't done this, or I hadn't planned, or I hadn't, I didn't learn about this early enough. And then I was like, oh, okay. So I'm seeing the difference. In cases where I'm able to deliver, I was able to plan properly. I had the resources that I needed. I was able to project well. And when I do that, I perform excellently. I then realized that, oh, okay, the reason you're frustrated here is because you think that you are unable to do it.
Mm.
But actually, it's not that you're unable, because you see streaks of this thing that you're worried about in other situations. So the capacity is there. It's just that in this situation, you haven't planned it through. You haven't, put set goals. You haven't looked at, what am I missing? What are the things? And if I don't have it, how can I get it? Or who are the people that have it that I can partner with to do it? And then I just felt like I actually am. I am that person. I am the shit. And honestly, if you don't, you have to, because if you don't have a knowing in yourself that you can, like you said, you will never do.
Yeah.
And I realized that every human being is capable of anything. The difference is that some people are exposed to this knowing earlier than others.
Yep. Yeah.
right? And or some people are opportune to have all the resources that they need so that they constantly feel capable. They're constantly winning. So it just improves their confidence in themselves and in their capacity.
Yeah.
So I think it's really about who are your mentors, and what are the resources that you're availing yourselves with.
Yeah. But that knowing is the key, because even for those that have the resources, even if they're not capable, they can tell themselves or fake it till they are capable,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, that's very, very interesting. And finally, what do you want your story to be?
This one, I know exactly what it is. I want to be that Nigerian woman that impacted the entertainment industry.
Ooh,
Yes, I want it to be that people can say that this is what she contributed to the industry in Africa. Um, this was her contribution. There's a song that I always remember, by Beyonce, "I Was Here." And I find it to be such a powerful song because I don't want to just live and not mean anything, not do anything.
yeah,
I don't need to be globally resonating, but I need it to be impactful enough that a lot of people remember my story. And I think this comes from just my father. My father was a very impactful person in his industry. He was an impactful person in people's lives. And I want that to be my legacy. I really do. The other day, somebody sent me a message, put up on social media, the impact that my father had on his life. And I thought, this is what I want.
what you
I
want.
mean, he died 15 years ago. And this man is saying, I would not be who I am if not for this person that came through my life. And I want that to be my story. Somebody was also telling me how in Nigeria, at that time in the ships, it was very difficult for people to work because it was very hot. And my father found a way to introduce air conditioning in ships.
Wow,
I had no idea.
wow,
And that is the kind of, and people remember him apparently for that, like in Nigeria, at least, I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah,
And so he worked with like some engineers and like a cooling company, I think Democool or something like that. And, you know, and that improved efficiency for the work, for his workers. When I think about that, that is what I want. That is exactly what I want. That's what I want to be remembered for. That person that makes an impact. So,
fantastic. Oh wow, this has been amazing. So much food for thought, so much to go chew on, and all that. So yeah, thank you again. This has been amazing. And I mean, where can people find you if you want to be found?
at Aibee Abidoye, on IG. I don't use Twitter, even though I'm on Twitter, I think as the same, Aibee Abidoye. Um, yeah, I think those are the two places to find me. I don't know if I should be giving my email. But DM me. I'm always available on DMs. Uh,
Fantastic.
responsive. But
Thank
it's always
you.
nice talking to you and chatting about this.
Same here.
And
Same here.
to let everybody know, I'm so proud of you because this is something I feel like we've been talking about forever.
Ages. Yeah.
Because I feel like you're naturally this person, like you're naturally the inquisitive person, and you're able to pull out certain things from people, and you're able to identify things, you're able to give really great feedback. And really you're one of those people that you're very essential in my story, and like, yeah, I talk about my family and my sister, but those times that I've had to call you to brainstorm through issues and even interviews. Like, I remember you sat down on me and helped me with an interview, and I ended up, like going all the way with it. So I'm just so proud of you, and I can't wait to see where this goes. Like, I really can't.
It's been amazing. Thank you